All right, let's get started. So welcome everyone. I'm so excited that you're joining us. This is a very necessary topic. There has never been a better time to become empowered and equipped on how to divorce a narcissist. It is time. So as mentioned, joining us tonight is Anne Grant, Jackie Miller, and Dr. Nadine Macaluso. We are going to get started with Anne. Anne Grant is a family law attorney. She's an author, entrepreneur, and mother. After surviving a high conflict divorce with her litigator spouse, Anne figured out how not to just survive, but thrive. In her legal practice in Manhattan Beach, California, she empowers her clients to set boundaries both in and out of the courtroom. Her best-selling book, The Divorce Hacker's Guide to Untying the Knot: What Every Woman Needs to Know About Finances, Child Custody, Lawyers, and Planning Ahead, provides legal, financial, and psychological expertise to help readers skillfully prepare and protect themselves as they navigate the minefield of modern divorce, proactively, efficiently, and resiliently. Anne is excited to team with like-minded professionals like Nadine and Jackie to empower those contemplating divorce to face the future with knowledge and optimism, because it's time. Just want to do one side note that I forgot to mention before we got started. The meeting is being recorded. This webinar will be sent out tomorrow along with the slides and a list of resources so that you can come back to this again and again, because the information is very useful. Also, there will be a Q&A portion in the last 15 minutes of the event. So as questions come up for you, feel free to just put them into the chat box, prefaced by the name of the panelist for who the question is for. And that way we can quickly access them towards the end. And if you want to send them to me directly so that they're private, you can also do that. So all that being said, Anne, I'm going to hand it over to you and we'll get started.
Thank you, Clara. Welcome, everyone. It really is time. We're so happy that you're here with us. There's over 106 people that are joining us tonight. And you know, not that long ago, I was in your position. I was faced with a marriage that wasn't working. We built a life together that from all appearances seemed wonderful. We had the big family home at the beach, 3 kids. My ex-husband and I were litigators at large international law firms practicing corporate law. I certainly never imagined I would be a family law attorney, and yet I was living a lie. And so, you know, from where you sit right now, I know how much courage this takes. I know that it is not easy to step out of a bad marriage, but I want you to understand, and I know that Jackie and Nadine does as well, that it's possible. It really truly is possible to create a new and even perhaps a better life. And we're here working as a team to help you do that. And we're volunteering our time tonight because this really matters to us. We were all married to narcissists. Nadine was married to one of the most infamous, the Wolf of Wall Street. Jackie and I's ex-husbands were slightly less famous. But nevertheless, we all endured what many of you are probably enduring given your participation here tonight. And it really is time. There's an energetic movement right now. It's in the air. We were just talking about it before everybody jumped in to participate tonight. And we want to help you tonight to understand some of what we'll call sort of the hacks or secrets to get through this. After spending 5 years in courtrooms battling with my ex-husband, given that we were both corporate litigators, I realized there had to be a better way. Even though I was a trained lawyer, the impact on every 4 to 6 weeks spending the day in a courtroom with my ex-husband was devastating, and particularly not just for me and him, but for our children. And I have a special place in my heart for those of you with children. And it's why I've set up my family law practice in Manhattan Beach. And finally, we're able to manifest Manhattan Beach family law. We take a holistic approach to divorce. We really do view it as an opportunity to help you create a new and even better life, and work with professionals like Jackie, who's a divorce coach, and Nadine, who's a wonderful, wonderful therapist, to help walk you through this process. I'm not a therapist. I know a lot of my clients like to think of me as one. And of course, when they get their bill at the end of the first month, they realize that probably they shouldn't use me as a therapist. But it really does take a village to leave a narcissist and to not just survive, but thrive. So with that, let's jump in. Knowledge is power. If you're married to a narcissist, it's absolutely imperative that you understand the different ways you can get divorced and that you select the right path for you. There are many misconceptions about mediation, traditional litigation, and the collaborative process. And so the path is very important, particularly if you're divorcing a narcissist. And I want to go through that with you now so that you're not surprised later on down the road. Mediation. With Gwyneth Paltrow's catchy divorce moniker, conscious uncoupling, it really seems that the only enlightened approach to divorce is to mediate. And it seems like it would cost less money. After all, there are no lawyers involved. You're going to sit across the table with your spouse and work things out. You're not going to have to go to court. Everything's going to be great. However, while most of you would like it to be that way, I'm sure you understand that if you could sit across the kitchen table and work things out with your husband or wife, you probably wouldn't be here tonight. But that's what you'll be doing in mediation. The mediator is not your lawyer. He or she is not there to give you legal advice. They're there for one reason and one reason only, and that's to help you reach an agreement. And quite frankly, you know, the way they earn their living is by settling your case. So it really doesn't, because I act as a mediator from time to time. It doesn't really matter that much where you settle, so long as the case settles. So what happens in mediation when you're dealing with a narcissist, chances are, whether you like to admit it or not, you're in a codependent relationship. You are. That's why you're married to a narcissist. Why do they want to mediate? They're always going to try to get you to mediate, and this is why. So they can bully you into what they want you to do. They don't want you to have a lawyer. They're always going to tell you. I was meeting with a gal yesterday who said, oh, my husband texted me on the way over here. He's a narcissist. And he said, whatever you do, don't hire Ann Grant. Don't hire a lawyer. We don't want to have to spend the money for that. And then he proceeded to explain to her that she was entitled to 3 years of alimony in a marriage that lasted for 27 years. So I think this is a great example of why mediating with a narcissist has a very high likelihood of not working. All right, let's talk about the collaborative approach. Now, the collaborative approach I like a lot, and this is why. I get to represent you and be your lawyer in the collaborative approach. Your spouse also has an attorney, and we work with a team depending upon what the needs of your situation are. So in the collaborative approach, we very well may have someone like Jackie there, who is a divorce coach. And Jackie's purpose, and she'll explain to you more fully in a moment, but her purpose in this setting is to help manage the emotions that are associated with divorce. Because what we want to do, or at least what I want to do, is try to treat it like the dissolution of a business partnership as much as we possibly can. And I know firsthand, having gone through divorce myself with 3 children, assets, and a narcissistic spouse, that this is very, very difficult. That's where Jackie comes in. because otherwise it's going to be very expensive and very time consuming and very, very painful. So you may have a divorce coach. If you have assets, you may have a financial advisor. If the earning, the way that you or your spouse earns income is complex, or if you have many assets, you may have a forensic accountant. So there can be a whole team of people, and this can work really, really well in certain situations. The problem with collaborative, and I'll illustrate this by giving another example of a real life situation, is that like mediation, it's voluntary. It is not binding. So let me explain the example. Gal comes to me and she has been in collaborative for 6 years. This is a real life story. That is way too long to be sitting across a conference room table with your soon-to-be ex-spouse, who's a narcissist. She's been in the process for 6 years because there's no court-imposed deadlines moving things along, and a lawyer in the collaborative process cannot go to court. We actually sign an agreement that we will not go to court. And I know this sounds very appealing to you. I know that most of you don't want to go to court, and I get that. But I'm going to explain in a moment why you shouldn't be afraid of the court system when you're divorcing a narcissist. So she comes to me. They've been doing this for 6 years. He owns many of his own businesses, which means she and he own many of their own businesses because they were started during marriage. So that's a joint asset. But when she finally gets the forensic reports, she realizes that he has not been transparent. And because they're in collaborative, her lawyer cannot subpoena records, she cannot depose him, and she cannot go to court and ask a judge to compel compliance. She's stuck. What's worse is that she wants to hire me. Well, she wants to go to court, but she can't use her collaborative lawyer. Her collaborative lawyer has signed a stipulation that if the case falls out of collaborative, if collaborative doesn't work, she has to start all over. So here again, I believe that collaborative only works if you're dealing with a partner and you are also transparent and you're willing to be cooperative. And of course, you're willing to collaborate. All right, let's talk about what is traditional litigation, or I like to call the cooperative approach. And as a former litigator and someone who, for some reason, attracts people who are married to narcissists, this seems to be my specialty. This is the 100% guaranteed way you will get through your divorce if you go this route. You need to hire a lawyer to set boundaries. Nadine is going to explain to you that the only thing that works with a narcissist is setting boundaries. And I'll let her explore that in greater detail. My job as a lawyer is to set those boundaries. And I like to be able to have the option to go to court and use the tools in my toolkit that I have spent 30 years honing if I need to, if your narcissistic spouse is not cooperative. Now, if he's cooperative or she is cooperative and their lawyer is as well, that's great. We will start negotiating right from the get-go. There's no reason to go to court. But often what I find in these situations, I would say 99% of the time, if not 100% of the time, is that in order to compel their compliance and their cooperation, I need to at least file something with the court to set a boundary so they know that we are serious. And then we can negotiate that boundary or that bookend and get you where you need to be. Sometimes we have to go to court and win to get you where you need to be. And that's just, the inconvenient truth about being married to a narcissist. So the key here really is to find the right lawyer. This is critical. I was astounded when I came to the practice of family law or divorce law, coming from a large corporate law firm. How can I say this nicely? the level of unprofessionalism, I'll put it that way, that I found within the family law bar. And what I mean by that is, this is not typically your Harvard graduate law review editor-in-chief person. And so you really, really and truly do need to find the right lawyer. I think you should do what you do when you figure out who's going to paint your house or remodel your kitchen. You should get at least 3 estimates. And so you should talk to several lawyers. You need a lawyer who's going to listen to you. This is your life. And there are lots of lawyers out there who I've seen who don't. Like, they'll file things without even consulting with their clients and sign their name to it. It's astonishing to me. So the reason I wrote The Divorce Hacker's Guide to Untying the Knot, that's full of lots of off-the-record advice and divorce hacks, is because I want you to be fully informed. Knowledge really is power. I want you to understand what is going on, because this will probably be, if not the most important, one of the most important financial decisions and all-round decisions with respect to your children and everything else that you will ever make. And so your lawyer needs to be a team player. They need to listen to you, they need to be available, and they need to have the tools in the background to do what's required to get you what you need and what you deserve. So how do you find that lawyer? I'm going to let you in on a secret. I'm going to let you in on the tips to find a lawyer who can kick ass when it's time and who will negotiate once the guardrails have been set. And I'm going to provide you with the top 10 questions to ask during that initial consultation. And these questions are going to reveal whether this lawyer has what it takes if you end up in the courtroom, and whether they're going to be available for you when you need them, whether you can afford them, and most importantly, whether they can handle your narcissistic spouse. We're going to hand this out to you later. So I'm going to run through them now and give you some tips, but you'll have this list. This list is also in my book, and it's also in the Divorce Hacker app, because I know when you're interviewing attorneys, you might be a little bit nervous. So you can access the app, it's free, and right in your phone, you can have the questions. And I know that because someone just came in and interviewed me last week and was asking me the questions that I had come up with and was looking at them in her phone. So the first question is, how long have you been practicing, and what percentage of your practice is devoted to family law? It's very important to have a lawyer who's experienced in this area and not somebody who just dabbles. And I know that because I switched over from doing corporate litigation, and it took me a good long time to get up to speed with the nuances of family law. It's unique. It's not as simple as you might be led to believe, where you can just do it on LegalZoom, unless you don't have any kids or any assets, in which case you should do that. But it involves many different areas of the law. It involves business litigation often, real estate issues, not probate, but trust and estates issues, contract law. I have literally been required to use every single area of the law that I learned and studied both in law school and in my corporate practice, with the exception of constitutional law thus far. And then you want to ask some questions to find out whether this person that you're talking to prefers to negotiate and settle, or whether they just want to be in court. You really don't want a lawyer who wants nothing more than to go to court and pretend like they're Perry Mason. That's only going to benefit your attorney, because they're going to make a lot of money doing that. So you want a lawyer who's a problem solver and not someone who stirs the pot. So ask them what they're perceived, tell them about your case, and then ask them how they perceive your case is going to go. And they should be telling you what I just told you, which is that, they may need to file a motion or two, but ultimately what they're trying to do is reach a resolution on your behalf and not go to trial. Very few family law cases go to trial. I happen to have 4 that are going to trial this month, and that is definitely a record and highly unusual. Then you want to know who's going to work on your case and how involved the person that you're interviewing will be personally. So, for example, I have a law firm, I have several associates. Most good family law attorneys that are successful do, because we're so busy and it's efficient. My associates bill at a rate that's much lower than mine. Not everything that we do requires, nor would it be prudent for me to do it. There are lots of forms that have to be filled out. I have my paralegal do that. There's often research that has to be done. My more junior associates are better at doing research than I am, because I haven't done that in 20 years. But the main thing is this: when it comes time to talk strategy, or to go to court, or to handle a settlement conference, you need to know that the person you hire is the one who's going to handle that. You also need to know that if you need to reach that person, you can. Now, they might be in court a lot. They might be in settlement conferences, or they might be meeting with clients and be busy all day. But my view on this is that you deserve to get a response within 24 hours, either from their assistant or an associate, or someone on the team who can let you know when your lawyer is available and when he or she can talk to you. I have a lot of people who've come and hired me solely for the reason that they never get a response from their attorney. And that's just unacceptable. You should not settle for that. Ask them how much their retainer is. The way this works is every lawyer is going to ask for a retainer. That's a flat fee. And in Southern California, it ranges from $2,000 to 20 grand. And they're all going to ask for it, and then they're going to bill against it. And that's going to tell you right off the bat whether you can afford the attorney. A lot of that depends on the complexity of your case. So that's something that you want to ask them about. They should be able to answer that right off the bat. And if their retainer is 20 grand and you don't have 20 grand to spend, then don't waste your time. Move on to the next person. Ask them what their hourly rates are and how you will be billed. As we already talked about, attorneys and staff bill at different rates, and they should be billing against the retainer. You should be getting an invoice every single month, and the invoice should articulate for you in 6-minute increments exactly what your team is spending their time on. There should never be any question about why this is costing what it is costing. And if you work with us, you will know beforehand exactly what's going to happen. You will never be surprised. We don't just file things and run off to court without telling you. And I know that there are lawyers who do this, and I believe that that is unethical. You definitely want to ask how long your divorce will take and what the attorney estimates that it will cost. And when you ask this question, the potential lawyer is going to respond, I don't know. And that's true. That's the right answer, because it depends greatly on your spouse and his or her counsel. However, what you want to follow up with is, how long do most of your cases take? And if the answer to that question is 5 years, you should run. I already addressed number 7. If you're unavailable when I call or send an email, how long should I have to wait for a response? My view is you should get a response within 1 business day or sooner. We try to do it sooner. You should be receiving copies of all the documents generated on your behalf before they're filed. We always work with our clients. We have them review the drafts. We send them back and forth by email until we get them right where everybody, is in agreement. If you don't understand what's going on, we'll have a call or a meeting until you do. So you want to make certain that that is something that's going to happen with your legal team. And then you want to ask, even, if you don't want to go to court, and I know you don't, but you need to ask whether the attorney that you're hiring is familiar with the judges in your jurisdiction and the procedures. You got to hire somebody who knows their way around a courtroom if you're divorcing a narcissist. And quite frankly, there are a whole lot of family law attorneys who don't. How shall I put this? There are many lawyers who couldn't cut it in a courtroom, who I think became family law attorneys because they felt like they wouldn't have to go to court. But again, you got to buckle your seatbelt if you're dealing with a narcissist, and you really need somebody who's not afraid to go to court and set boundaries. Lastly, you need to ask whether the lawyer is comfortable representing someone in your situation, someone who's married to a narcissist. It's a specialty at our law firm. But it really does require some specialized knowledge because, as you know, they are super duper charming. They're going to charm the pants off of the mediator who's hired to settle your case, the experts. They're going to try to do it with the judge. And so this is critical. All right, I'm going to turn this over to Jackie so she can talk to you about how to deal with the emotional aspects of your case.
And before we jump into Jackie, this is Anne's information. Again, these slides will be sent out to you. And these are clickable links. You can click her email and it will generate an email, her LinkedIn, her Instagram, all of these things you can click on and it'll be, you'll be taken to that resource. All right, let's get started with Jackie. So Jackie is a certified divorce coach and consultant specializing in high conflict divorce. She is also the host of the podcast, Out of Crazy Town, your guide to divorcing a narcissist. After surviving her own high conflict divorce, Jackie knew she had to help others going through this difficult process. She set out to be the professional that she wished she'd had in her own divorce. Jackie is an expert in documentation, communication, and strategy. She is the secret weapon you need on your team. Jackie currently resides in the LA area with her 2 daughters. So without further ado, Jackie, take the floor. There you go. Let's see.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much. Tried to be one technical difficulty.
That was a really good sign language. That was good.
Hi, you guys. Thank you so much, Clara. I'm so glad you are all here. As Clara mentioned, I went through my own high conflict divorce, and that is why I do what I do now. Just like Anne was not in family law before, and Nadine became a therapist. We are here, like Anne said, because we care. We know how difficult it is. We know what a horrible journey it can be. And so having the right team in place is absolutely paramount. I knew I had to help other people. I actually started my practice before my divorce was even over. I felt that strongly about it. I started first my podcast, and I first got a certification in being a divorce coach, and then went on to actually get a second certification specifically in high conflict, because if you are here on this webinar tonight, you already have either a sense if you're just starting the journey, or you already know if you're in the middle of it. It is a completely different animal than any other kind of divorce. And like Anne mentioned, there are even paths that you just can't take that other divorces can take. You have to have the right strategy, the right communication, the right understanding of the court system, the right heads up of what your ex might do to you. There is so much that goes in to this process when you are divorcing a narcissist or a high conflict personality. And that is where I come in. I'm the process of it. And I am here for all things high conflict divorce in the process. Everything from if you're about to leave and you need to prepare. Preparation is one thing, honestly, I did not do. And if I could go back in time, I would have done it completely different. And so, but even if you didn't and you're in the middle of it, it's okay. There are still a lot of steps that you can take that will just help your case, and it will help your attorney help you. And also the emotional side, which Anne mentioned a couple of times. I am your sounding board. I am here when things go horribly wrong. I'm up to date on every single detail of your case. You don't have to explain anything to me. I went through it. I get it. When you explain that tiny, minute detail of something he or she did, you don't have to elaborate. I get all of the undertones. I get the manipulation. I understand all of it. And so what a divorce coach does is really they're your secret weapon. They're the person that you have to think through things, strategize things. And I'm going to get a little bit, into exactly what it is we do and then give you tips and tricks along the way. But basically, we're your thinking partner. And so I'll explain a little further. So Claire, next slide. First big piece of the puzzle, you guys, is mindset. Your narcissist, ex, spouse, what have you, is hell-bent on keeping you on your back foot. Their strategy is to keep you as emotional, as upset, as frustrated, as flustered as they possibly can, because that's how they're going to work all of their manipulations in the background. And if they have you off kilter, it's going to make it that much easier for them. So one of the first things I do with clients is we have a talk about radical acceptance. You already have an idea of who you're dealing with. There is something my colleague coined post-separation abuse. If you've been married to a narcissist, you've been suffering abuse throughout your whole marriage. They're going to kick it up a notch once you hit the divorce stage. And it's called post-separation abuse. And it is another animal aside from the abuse that you were suffering before. They're pulling out all the stops. Their strategy is to scorch the earth just to win for no other reason. So when you're in the family court system, there are a lot of things that are just really frustrating. There's no emotional justice there. There's so many variables that can change from day to day. It can depend on your judge. It can depend on so many things. And so you have to have a sounding board. You have to have sort of a truth. You have to have a true north that can help you deal with these things, because they're extremely frustrating. And so I really talk with people about what the realities of the family court system are. You don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with it. But if you can't accept the reality of what it is and who you're dealing with and what they're willing to do, you don't have a platform from which to jump from. So I know that sounds like a real Debbie Downer on this, but it's the truth. And once you can accept what's going on, we then can start to make a plan, which leads me into my next point, reframing setbacks. Something I do all the time with clients, because there are setbacks. There are small setbacks. There are big setbacks. Your ex is going to win sometimes on different scales. And it's going to put you in the fetal position for a minute. It's going to make you confused. It's going to make you upset. Take a beat, take a rest, take a deep breath. That is what I'm here for. We go through it, and you have to trust me on this. A lot of times, setbacks can become opportunities. But if you can't calm down, have somebody to think through this with, you might miss those opportunities. And these are things you can bring back to your attorney once you've had a chance to stop, think through them. And a big piece of that is what I love to do as well, profiling your narcissist. I take a whole session and we talk through what their triggers are, what makes them happy, what makes them sad, what was their childhood like, what was the beginning of your relationship like, what's happened so far in your divorce. No detail is too small. I cannot tell you how many times 3/4 of the way through a profiling session, a big light bulb goes off and I say, wait, he reacts how when you do what? There we go. Let's bring this to your attorney. This could be an angle that you take. And this could be leverage that you use as you're trying to get what you need and either defend yourself, usually from accusations that they're hurling, or to be in your pro column to get you what you need. So profiling is a really big piece of the puzzle. I always say we get to play, my kids are addicted to Criminal Minds, the show. So I always say we get to be FBI agents for a day and be part of the behavioral analysis unit. And we get to profile your ex. So the next big part, aside from your mindset, is your presentation. What does that mean? What is your presentation? Your presentation is how you come off to everyone, even your own attorney. And the reason it's so important is that in the family court system, part of the radical acceptance is, for a very long time, your judge and any other professionals that come into your sphere during the process don't know who the problem person is. They see he said, she said. They just see a big ball of a mess. They see both sides as complainers. They see both sides as high maintenance. And it takes a while before they're able to untangle what's going on. And how you present throughout this whole process can honestly make or break you. And it is something I work a lot with on clients. And I'm going to break down the different components of that, but it is critical that you are presenting as not the crazy one, frankly, to all of the professionals and especially the judge during this process. A big part of that is your communication. Text messages, emails, in person, anything that you communicate, you need to pretend is being said directly to the judge. You need to look like the cooperative one. You need to be the man in the white hat. You need to be the perfect co-parent, whether you like it or not, whether your ex is throwing it in your face or not, whether your ex is trying to manipulate it or not. It is your way that you're going to show these professionals over time that you are not the problem one. And so I work a lot on communication. Like, what do you think of this text? Oh my gosh, they've been blowing up my phone. Mike's been blowing up my phone all day, you know, pushing all my buttons. I'm so upset. Do I respond? There are a lot of nuances that go into your communication with them, and not buying in. They're going to constantly try to pull you into conflict, pull you into drama. Look what she's doing, look what he's doing. And your communication is huge. Another thing is your documentation. Now, I'm sure if you already haven't heard it 1,000 times, you will. Everybody and their brother loves to say, you have to document that, you have to document that. To be honest with you, during my process, this constantly put me in the fetal position because it's so overwhelming. What do I document? How do I document it? What is documentation? Documentation is so many things. It's emails, it's texts, it can be 911 calls, it can be transcripts from past court interactions. You know, it obviously can be depositions. It can be, you know, if you had to call, you know, if CPS was called, it can be declarations from other people in your sphere that witnessed something. Documentation can be of so many things. So what do you do with it? How do you use it? It needs to be in a form that your attorney can help you. So one thing we do is after you've come up with the strategy with your attorney, I usually have 2 big columns, but we create timelines. And one is usually fighting allegations against you, because there are going to be a lot of them. And one of them is usually trying to make your case for what it is that you're going for. And so within those timelines, I have an electronic format that I like to use, that I teach people. You can tweak it, make your own. You can turn it into hard copy if you need to. But it gives you something when you sit down with your attorney that, especially if you're about to be, you know, in a court situation, you guys can pick out, say, 2 or 3 big things that support your case. You have the documentation to support it. And then when you're in front of the judge is so happy that you took the time to be so concise and pick just a couple of things. And then you say, oh, and by the way, I have 18 more with documentation, if you'd like to see them. So it's, and a lot of this may never see the light of day, to be honest with you, but it also helps you as you're documenting, frame your story, frame your reality. It brings to mind all those things that you forgot about that happened. And it just gives you the confidence in what your story is. And it gives you the tools with your attorney to make your case. And all of this feeds into your strategy. Strategy. This is a chess game, but you're playing with someone who's completely ignoring the rules. So you are constantly have to be on it. You have to tweak it. You have to be resilient. It's something that you have to keep talking through. And your communication can often be strategic. We can talk about things. Let me just give you an example. At drop off, you're exchanging children, and he's making, and I'm sorry if there's any males on the call or webinar. I know that there are female narcissists. He calls you names as he's handing off the kid, and now it's happened 3 or 4 times. there's a strategic, because now you can't, there's no documentation of that. It didn't happen in email, it didn't happen in text. There's a strategic email that we're going to send. And again, this is all with the approval of your attorney. I always make sure everything's cool with your attorney. I have you go to your attorney first to make sure that our strategies are and tactics are in place with their thoughts. There's a strategic way we're going to document that when we send an email to him or her, and we're going to be proactive with it. And it's going to build into your case with their abuse. So strategy can come in many different forms. And it's just something that you need to constantly be on top of. And divorce coaches, and specifically high conflict divorce coaches, because as I just mentioned, we all know is a completely different animal, can help you with all of that. And I absolutely love what I do. I believe in it. I know that it does make things better. I am the person, like Clara said, that I wished that I had during my divorce process. And I know all the attorneys I work with who get it, love it, because their clients come to them more organized with ideas, and it makes their time together more efficient. And it can even lower your bill if you're like Ann said, you don't want to get the bill at the end of the month if you've been using your attorney as a therapist, or or just a vent, or just coming confused and not sure what you want to talk about. So those are definitely all the benefits of working with a divorce coach. You can definitely go to my website at jackiemillercoaching.com. There is the link there also to my podcast that takes you to my website as well, to the podcast page where I've interviewed both professionals and other survivors. And I have a couple new episodes coming out soon. And please email me, and you can also just book a free session if you just want to talk and see if divorce coaching is right for you. So thank you so much for logging in tonight. I'm so glad that you're all here. And Clara, I will hand it back to you.
Thank you, Jackie. Oh my gosh, that was so informative. I learned so much. Okay, speaking of therapists, we are transitioning now to Dr. Nadine Macaluso. Dr. Nadine is a licensed marriage and family therapist in private practice. She has her PhD in somatic psychotherapy, and her personal and clinical expertise is in attachment trauma, shame, and personality disorders such as narcissism. Dr. Macaluso is also the ex-wife to the infamous Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort.
Lucky me. Continue, Clara.
That was it. You've got it. Now you go.
Okay, so you know what? We've all heard a lot of things. I would like us all to just like connect inside. What are you guys feeling? Connect to your breath. This has been a lot of information. Honor where you are right now. I know I need to do that. And guess what? It's also a great time to divorce a narcissist, right? Just look at the news. Narcissists are getting exposed everywhere in every industry. And I happened to get divorced from one of the most infamous ones. And it was hard. It was very hard. And I want to actually explain to you, though, in a very simple form, though narcissists are never simple. Narcissists care about their image. They care about power, control, and they don't feel. So they're not very empathetic, and they're very self-absorbed. So I was very young when I married my ex-husband, and you know what happened is that I got to a turning point. This relationship was unsafe. I could not stay in it anymore, nor could my children stay in it anymore. And then all of a sudden I was like, I'm going to reclaim myself. It was so scary. The way to reclaim myself was courage, therapy, and a codependency clinic. And unfortunately, for many of the people that are watching this webinar, is that I could only divorce my ex-husband because he got arrested. I mean, that's how scary he was. So I feel you. I feel like I was blessed in a weird way because I feel like I was safe. And I know you never want to be in that situation again. So Clara, let's go to the next slide and explain what we're in. Trauma bonds. I wish someone told me 25 years ago what a trauma bond was. It's a relationship in which you feel bonded, imagine this, with a person who is very hurtful towards you, yet you remain loyal to them despite betrayal and exploitation. Take that in. I did that. And there are many ways that this happened. And the only reason why I'm telling you this now is so you don't do it again. Can you recall that your partner excessively and chronically criticizes you and blames you and denies their actions and your reality? That's called gaslighting. That is crazy making, as Jackie mentioned. You've lost your sense of self. You no longer trust yourself or your perception of reality. I mean, just soak that in. You no longer trust yourself because a narcissist will strip you. They'll strip you through devaluing you, yelling at you, criticizing you, blaming you. You don't want to do that again. You invest time, effort, and resources into the relationship at the cost of friendships and other relationships, even though your partner's behavior never changes. And the crazy part about this is that narcissists want to isolate you, because it's only through isolation that you really also lose another connection to yourself, because relationships are a part of who we are. You feel stuck, helpless, trapped, extreme fear of leaving the relationship while leaving the relationship. I mean, listen, the reason why it's a trauma bond is that trauma is an overwhelming sense of fear. It's not only what happens to you externally, trauma, it is what happens inside your mind and body. What do you feel? And it's overwhelming. That's why you feel helpless. And so, because I'm obsessed with this whole thing, because of what I went through, and I've researched it for many, many years, and you'll find many links to that research, I invite you to take the trauma bond assessment and see where you fall. Clara, next one. Oh boy, right. So what happens, right? So you have a pathological love relationship. Never fun, never fun. You fear, oh wait, I have to stop. Guess what? Even though you have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, 75% of people who experience PTSD will experience post-traumatic growth. That's exciting. You're one of those people, but PTSD is real, okay? You feel hypervigilant. Oh, that sucks. I mean, that's terrible. I mean, you feel afraid of that person, whoever they are. You lack sleep, you want to avoid your partner. Don't avoid what you need to do. It causes anxiety. I'm going to repeat that. Don't avoid. Avoidance causes anxiety. It's actually a normal response to trauma. Don't do it. Emotional flashbacks. How many times has your partner texted you or emailed you and you've been like, oh, you brace. What do they want now? What do they want with me? That's normal. Just like we started this webinar with breath on my section, go back to breath. Let your in count be 4, let your out count be 6. Learn to regulate your emotions. Name it to tame it. I am feeling anxiety. I am feeling stressed. Guess what? I can manage this. I can do this. You have to learn to regulate what you're feeling. Rumination. Rumination is huge. I mean, listen, we all overthink. It's part of us reifying the brain and thoughts, meaning that we make the brain and thoughts godlike, but it causes anxiety. Don't do it. It keeps you in avoidance. And if you're ruminating about your partner, turn the mirror back on you. What do I need to do today? Don't worry about what they're doing during this divorce. It's never going to behoove you. Ooh, loss of self. This was a hard one for me. You know, difficulty making decisions, difficulty in trusting yourself and others. It's a loss of autonomy, self-doubt. But listen, how could you not feel doubtful Your partner devalued you, criticized you, insulted you. And then when you were home with people, no, then when you were out in public, they were like, you're the best. Then when you were home, they devalue you. That's gonna make you have a loss of self. That's gonna make you have self-doubt. And cognitive dissonance, which is a very fancy word for saying, don't believe what they tell you. Don't believe what your heart tells you. Believe their behaviors. Believe what they do. Believe their cruelty. And I know it leads to brain fog, but remember, go back to what they do because they are out to get you. And I hate to say that because I know you married them because you love them. But you need to protect yourself and your children if you have them. Next slide. And here we come. You can heal. You can heal. Okay? Post-traumatic growth, as I stated, or I think I stated, 75% of people who have PTSD will develop post-traumatic growth. That means they will find meaning, they will find resilience, they will discover who they are. How beautiful is that? So I always said the wolf was my Buddha, ironic as that is. You must create an arsenal of internal and external resources. These create positive experiences and develop resilience in your mind and body. Guess what? Healing is possible. So, as we become adults, there is a theory called self-determination theory. And it's a very important theory in psychology. And what it states is that if you have these three areas of competence, autonomy, and relationships or relatedness, you will be a healthy, happy adult. So, back to Freud. Two areas of your life that you need to master are love and work. So with competence, I'm talking about work. Listen, guys, girls, people, what have you been doing the whole time you've been married to this narcissist? What skill can you develop that will give you confidence? I don't care if it's a hobby. I don't care if it's work. I don't care if it's learning a new language. I don't care if it's sticking to your exercise program. Remember, you were stripped of who you are. You need to take back your power. But even more important than that is that, do you feel confident right now? Check in with yourself. Do you feel confident? You can't buy confidence at a store. You need to have the courage to face your fears so you can have confidence to build competence. And you guys can do it. I know you can. And you have to do it in a very small way to start. I went back to school at 39. I mean, that's ridiculous. Had to finish 2 years of my undergrad, my master's, and my PhD. And I remember being in a fishbowl, which means that I was with 9 people training to be a psychologist. And I had to do therapy in front of 9 people and my teacher. I thought I was going to throw up. I faced my fear and I did it step by step. You guys can do it too. Let's go to the next slide. Another internal resource that you need to build is autonomy. You lost your autonomy while married to this person. Who are you? Aren't you curious? I want to know that. Who are you aside from being a wife, aside from or man or husband, or aside from being a mother? If you have beautiful children, which I'm sure you do, or many of you do. Who are you? That's what I want to know. That's what you want to know. That's really important. And you need to discover that through therapy, through journaling, through breath work. I mean, there are so many different ways to discover and take the time out of who are you. And I know I lost myself in my relationship. I mean, I was doing things, yet I know I wasn't truly connected to who I was while I was in my first marriage. And it's very important. And then once you discover who that is, the second piece of autonomy is, can you express it? Can you set limits, as Anne said? Can you set boundaries? Can you actually live that in the world? And that's a really important piece of autonomy. And I bet you all can do that. Next slide. My favorite thing. Even though relationships have hurt me, they've always been beautiful. And for me, true healing came out of knowing, what is my attachment pattern? There are 4 different types of attachment patterns: secure, anxious, avoidant, and fearful. Avoidant. I'm actually avoidant, even though many people told me I was codependent. Not truly. And it's a very complicated thing. And you need to understand who you are in this dynamic. And it's humiliating. I mean, it's literally like letting a lynch mob of shame come into you. But you can do it because you don't have to blame yourself. You have to own it. Own. What did I bring into the relationship? What was I in denial? Did I avoid? Did I just pretend that everything was great? Was I afraid because I didn't want to deal with the fear of losing money because I was insecure? I grew up poor in Brooklyn and I felt insecure. So, I mean, that's very real work to do. And I know you all can do it through therapies, self-reflection, codependency groups, psychiatrists. There's many resources out there. Now, relationships, we're social beings. We are built for connection, yet don't tell everybody your story. Don't tell the grocery store person. Don't tell this story. You are married to a narcissist. They're dangerous people. That doesn't mean you can't overcome them. But when you think about what they're built on through power, control, their own self-image, lack of empathy, and self-absorption, that's not going to be very healthy for you. So nobody else is really going to understand it. Don't tell your mother, your aunt, this and that. When you can, brief moments, yet you need a good divorce attorney, a divorce coach, a therapist. Tell one friend. And then, because you can't take advice from people because they've never dealt with somebody like this necessarily. And it's not going to apply from you. And also, when you tell your story over and over again, what the research has shown that you're actually re-traumatizing your mind and body. And you don't need that right now. And listen, relationships can happen through pets, nature, music, every other way, philosophy. And you're going to find relationships with different music, with different experiences and people and things that are going to be very healing for you. I know you will do that, but make sure it's very intentional because you're going to be going through a very hard time. And there were a few things that Anne said in the beginning that I just really wanted to go back to before I end. Clara, go next slide, even though it doesn't apply. This is not easy. I want to say this again. This is not easy, and you can do it. And you're done with living a lie. And Anne, I just want to say this to you, and I didn't say this to you the other day. When Gwyneth Paltrow came up with that statement, conscious uncoupling, it really triggered something in me, and I didn't understand why. And I was like, really, Gwyneth? Now you're going to tell me that I have to be so conscious in my uncoupling? I can't do that. I did do it in a certain way, but she wasn't speaking to me. When you're divorcing a narcissist, it is painful and traumatic, and it's a pathological love relationship that is different than anything you will ever deal with. And guess what? You will have post-traumatic growth. You will learn about yourself from this dark night of the soul. You will grow if you're willing. And if you're at this seminar, webinar, you are one of those people. You are going to find the deepest, best part of yourself, like me, Anne, and Jackie did. And I am so grateful that you came here tonight. And listen, I flew in from the East Coast at 6:30 a.m. So I did it for you. And Anne, thank you so much for setting this up. And I am just so grateful that a small group of people are willing to show up for each other and tell each other tricks and tools and our expertise to get through this. And I wish you only the best in your journey. Take care, be well.
Thank you, Nadine. That was really validating. I got emotional, and I know so many of you guys watching also did. Okay, so I know it's 8:05. If you do need to go, don't feel bad that you're jumping off. We're going to move into the Q&A portion. So for anyone that wants to stay, of course, you're welcome to stay. And again, this is being recorded. It will be sent out along with the webinar slides and a separate list of resources. All of that will be sent to you tomorrow. Okay, so we have a question here for Anne. I'm not going to give all the details, just kind of give the gist. And this person filed for divorce after 4 years. They were together for a longer time after that, and she's wanting to know how to figure out the value of their assets because they had assets prior to the marriage. And then there were assets that were acquired during the marriage and not put in her name. So some assets came from her, some came from him afterwards, but were not in her name. Lots of manipulation with the assets. Does that make sense? So I'm gonna go ahead and unmute you.
Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, I understand that. We are faced with that all the time with the clients that come to us. And what I'm hearing from this question is, you know, the characterization of assets. And what that means is, are they characterized as either you or your spouse's separate property, or will they be characterized as community property? And more generally, I think what bears taking a moment to explain is, why does that matter? So the reason that it matters is, I believe most of our participants are here in the state of California. Not everybody's from Southern California, but most are. And so California is a community property state. I'm sure you all know that. But what that means is that anything earned or acquired during marriage is community property. So, for example, I have clients come in and say, my husband is telling me he's going to keep his pension. Well, if that pension was earned during marriage, that's your pension too. Likewise, if you're telling me you're going to keep your house so that you can have your children there until they graduate from high school, well, if that house was bought during marriage, that's a community property asset. And in fact, we may be able to figure out a way for you to do that, but your spouse is entitled to half of his or her share in the equity. That is a community asset. So the titling of assets is not always as determinative as when they were earned. So the date of separation becomes very, very important. The date of separation is not the date that you file necessarily for divorce, although it may be. And it's not always the date when your spouse moves out, although it may be. It's decided by looking at all subjective factors. So, and I'll explain why this is important in a moment, because it has to do with the characterization issue. So for example, and this happens a lot, as some of you probably know, you and your spouse are married currently, you're living in the same house, but for a while now, things have not been going well and you're sleeping in different bedrooms. What does that mean? Are you separated?
I'm curious. I'm honestly curious. What does that mean?
So yeah, right. What does that mean?
Yeah, because I don't know, it's like I never thought of that,
Yeah, well, I've been sleeping in a different bedroom for my husband for 8 years. Well, what we've got to look at is, are you holding yourself out as a married couple? Are you still having sex from time to time? Are you, are you living in separate or sleeping in separate bedrooms and have decided you're getting divorced, but you just don't want to tell your kids because your youngest child hasn't graduated from high school? So it's a subjective analysis, and often the date of separation doesn't matter, but there are cases where it does. And I'll give you an example. I had a gal come to me, and she came to me because she said she was checking her email on a Saturday morning, and her husband tapped her on the shoulder and said, "Hey, I'm leaving now." And she thought he was leaving to either go to the gym or bring back bagels. And then he said, "You need to talk to an attorney." So she came and talked to me. She told me that she thought that, he was really depressed and had been laid off from his job, and that's why he was depressed. And sure enough, we found out in fairly short order that in fact that wasn't true. He voluntarily quit his job as the CFO of a bank in Southern California and was fixing to travel around the world with his girlfriend. And his lawyer claimed that Saturday, the next day the next day was when over $1.5 million of assets that he generated at the bank vested for him. And his lawyer actually claimed that they were his separate property because he had moved out. So the move out date is critical. Now, we won that case because we were able to, the case law was very clear that because that income was earned during the marriage, even though it vested after he moved out, it was earned during the marriage, so it was community property. But I give that example to explain why it matters, why the date of separation will sometimes matter. So this is your takeaway. If you don't want to, anything earned after the date of marriage is your separate property. It's your separate income. So if you don't want to be sharing that, if you don't want that to be community property, you need to set a boundary. You need to set a clear boundary right now, even if you haven't filed for divorce, either by moving out or letting them know that you want to get divorced. And I know it's hard to do that, but this presentation has been all about setting boundaries. And you also need to go talk to a good family law attorney and understand whether you're putting yourself at some risk by not taking action.
Good heart, Anne.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
I mean, I couldn't do it like that. That's reality. Great to know that.
Yeah. This one is for Jackie. Again, not going to give details, but how do you document addiction? How do you document things that you can't really document, like vandalizing common law property, deflating my tires, breaking the windows in my car when there's no camera footage, things like that?
My first answer to that is you document it anyway. So you start keeping a log of these activities. You take pictures if it's appropriate. You basically do document as much as you can, even if there's no camera footage, et cetera. And I'll tell you why. When documenting, it's also important to go back in time and look at any evidence that you have, even during the marriage, of times that your spouse was abusive or did things like you're describing now. And it could even be to other people. And you're going to do a brain dump and write all these things down. See if you do have any hard documentation to attach to these, these events. And I always say no detail is too small, because when you provide this storyline or this timeline, even with just your own notes, or I always tell people to email themselves when these things happen, because it provides a timestamp, and emails are very, the court likes emails above all other, written communication, because, you can provide, you can prove the date that it was written. When you put all this together in a timeline, it tells a story, and it starts to make sense to the people around you. And so it's not significant, even if you don't have, camera footage. Like I said, it is still important information for you to journal, to email yourself, to take pictures of, addiction stories. I know sometimes it's not easy. I, have clients who the husband's a really big drinker, and she knows the kids are going over there on his custody time and that he's drunk, but he stays inside. He doesn't drink in a bar. It's hard, but the one thing I want to say about this process is you're training for an ultra marathon. And part of the radical acceptance piece is knowing that it's going to take a while, but they will show their colors. They are liars. They're manipulators. They will get caught up. And there will be a time that you're going to find some hard evidence, and it's going to make everything else make sense and validate everything that you've been documenting all along the way. So going back in time is important. Writing everything down anyway is important. And then, like I said, and it's sometimes is a waiting game, but it will happen and they will mess up.
Thank you, Jackie. There have been a couple of questions about whether or not Nadine is accepting new clients. Unfortunately, at this time, she is not. However, her social media is a really great resource, and she does have a book coming out sometime this year. So stay tuned for that. And you never know if she'll accept new patients in the future. Nadine, this question is for you. How do you overcome fears? Because I haven't filed for divorce yet for fear of something happening to my kids while I'm not there.
Oh, that's the worst one. I mean, you really need support to face fear. You can't do it alone. And the fear is so real. Honestly, I think I mentioned this, that the only reason I could divorce my ex-husband was because he got arrested, because I knew what he would do to me. And so to face the fears, go to therapy, go to Codependence Anonymous, and feel the fear and do it anyway. Because what a narcissist wants to instill in you, the number one thing, remember what I said, they want control, they want power. How do we do that? Through fear. They do it through fear, but we feel the fear. So acknowledge the fear, validate the fear, and hold. Because people are very black and white in general. They think, I feel fear, I can't do anything. No. Feel the fear, hold that you can do it, that you can do something to manage this. And I think that people, when they want to make a change, they think that they have to, they think about the overall outcome. Little, make a step, face the fear, make a step, face the fear, make a step. And then offer yourself tons of self-compassion as you face that fear. And you can do it. But it's very real. Don't dismiss it, accept it, and take little steps to face it. And trust me, you will get to the other side. But the little steps get you to the other side.
Thanks, Nick. So we'll do one more question each, just out of respect for time. And this person has assets both here in California and in the UK. Her husband is from the UK, and he's now back there. Does she need to hire an international divorce attorney as well as someone here locally? What would be the proceedings for that?
That's a good question. We've had quite a few cases where there are assets located overseas. And the answer is the very frustrating, it depends. So typically the way it works is, the way it does work, we have clients who, I've had clients in the Ukraine, in New York, in various parts of the world, in the UK. If one of the parties has been a resident here in the state of California for a certain period of time, then you can file here. Serving someone overseas can be difficult. We actually had to go jump through some hoops to get someone served over in Ukraine. So that's tricky, but the case can be heard in California. With regard to having assets overseas, what we'll do a lot of times, even if they're just assets located here in the US, that that we feel we have not been able to locate through our normal techniques of formal discovery or issuing subpoenas, is we will encourage our clients to retain the services of a private investigator. And there are private investigators, some of which are in Canada, that are particularly good at locating resources overseas. And so that's one mechanism that we utilize to get around some of the hurdles that we would otherwise, or I should say some of the burdens that the PI would otherwise encounter if he was here domestically. So there are things that we can do. I did have one case where recently where there were assets overseas and actually in Canada, and we considered utilizing counsel in Canada to issue subpoenas because there are various different things you have to do. You have to go through the Hague Convention, and I've done that before, to issue subpoenas in foreign countries. So it can be done, but it's cumbersome and expensive and time consuming. But we don't always have to do that. We try to be as efficient as we can before we go down that route, but we can certainly do that if we find that we have to.
Thanks, Anne. All right, Jackie, how do you document against someone who's putting on the act as the perfect parent for the court?
That can be just as frustrating as when they're being antagonistic, because all of a sudden their charm kicks in and they're perfect and the emails they're sending you are perfect and you're like, who is this person? And you know it's all a show. My answer is similar to the one about, when it's hard to document, the vandalism and the drinking without the evidence. I like to also get strategic in these situations. This is where the profiling comes in, really helpful, because we strategize about how to get your narc to drop their mask. If we know what their buttons are, and we know what's going to frustrate them, and there are ways that you can communicate with them that can push a button, but still make you look like the angel. Those are things that we train around. And we just look for the right opportunities. And again, just detailing, going into the past and still documenting how they used to really be, what they're really like, looking for documentation and supporting, arguments that way, but then also getting strategic and the waiting game in the future. I often strategize around how to get the narc to drop their mask so that we can see the real them. And then you have the real picture of what's going on and you can document it.
Awesome. And then Nadine, this will be the last question for the night. Nadine, when looking for a therapist, what questions should one ask to make sure that the therapist is well-versed in narcissistic abuse, to make sure that they get it?
So I think that the most important questions to ask are they trained in personality disorders? Because narcissism is actually a personality disorder, which means that when we diagnose people, which I don't even like, honestly, because I think it pathologizes people, but I understand why we do it. We have an Axis 1, which is a mood disorder, such as, are you anxious or depressed? And you know whether you're anxious or depressed, most of us, right? Or even bipolar. And then the Axis 2 is a personality disorder, and narcissism falls into a personality disorder. And actually, it's a cluster B personality disorder. And so we want to ask them, are they well versed in dealing with people that have severe personality disorders? Are they afraid to confront them? Because when you deal with people that have personality disorders and you practice, such as I I confront them on a daily basis. And I think they actually like it. So not that you have to be confronted, yet do they understand what it means when someone has a severe personality disorder? And so, and also, are they willing to confront you? You know, are they willing to tell you the truth and also get you to the other side? So personality disorders takes a lot of training. It's not just somebody probably with a master's degree, it's probably somebody with a PhD. And so, yeah, just ask them that and just see how comfortable or uncomfortable. And the most important thing is, after you've been living with a narcissist, is that you've stopped trusting your gut. Don't listen to your brain. When the therapist answers you, listen to your body, listen to your viscera, listen to your gut, and see what happens. And I trust that you'll find the right decision.
Thanks, Nay. All right, so that is it. I just want to invite you all to take a really deep breath. Just one more, just inhale and exhale. Thank you, Nadine, Jackie, and Anne for tonight.
Namaste.
Thank you for sharing your time and your expertise. If we didn't get to your question, please, 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 please check out the resources that we're sending you tomorrow. We've worked really hard to put these together for you, specifically thinking about your needs and where you're at and what you're going through, because we've all been through it. And so they're really thorough, they're very holistic, and they're going to be very helpful. You have Nadine, Anne, and Jackie's contact information. And hopefully, you know, we'll do this again sometime soon, but you'll also have the slides and you have yourselves, and just know that you're all you need. And that because Nadine, Jackie, and Anne got through it, and look at what they've become, you will absolutely get through it too. On that note,
Thank you,
all my love.
Thank you. Have a great night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Take care.
Bye-bye.